Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren.
1964.
Listen. There's music in the air.
I don't care what they say, I won't stay in a world without love.
And sitting across from me is Gwen Farrell, who looks likewise.
Well, now let's get down to personalities. It seems that Playboy magazine is up to its old naughty tricks again.
Thank you, Gwen. This has been Trent Christman and Gwen Farrell reporting from the newsroom floor.
Round, round, get around, I get around, yeah. It's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog.
AFN, all right? Just fine. Which Beatle are you? I'm Ringo.
I wanna hold your hand. Love you, yeah, 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 yeah.
At the sound of the last tone, it will be 16 hours, Central European time.
AFN News on the hour, midway on Weekend World. The Prime Minister of England has left London by jetliner for critical talks with the Prime Minister of Rhodesia. The conference is aimed at stopping the colony's white rulers from...
In other news, the city of Glasgow, Scotland, has been subject of a nautical oddity. A 4-foot 6-inch porpoise was found propped up in the men's room of the Central Glasgow Railroad Station. However, no one would venture an opinion on how the porpoise got there in the first place. This is Army Specialist Nolan Kenner.
Your reporter has been Army PFC Nolan Kenner.
There she was, just walking down the street singing.
That's my panorama assignment. This is Dick Rosenbaum, AFN News, Frankfurt.
That's when I fell for leader of the pack.
And this is the sound for Americans on the go in Europe. This is the sound of your Weekend World.
Slug AFN Playhouse, number 15, 1 Foot in Heaven, to be aired 22 March, 2105 hours. 1 Foot in Heaven, tonight on the AFN Playhouse. Tonight it is our pleasure to present 1 Foot in Heaven. Good evening, ladies. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the... Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the AFN. Oh. Tonight, it is our pleasure to present 1 Foot in Heaven, a humorous... Join us now as the curtain goes up on Act 1 of tonight's presentation, 1 Foot.
Lonely, I'm Mr. Lonely.
Come on, boy, see about me. See about me.
It's 8 minutes past the 17th hour as you drive carefully home.
Traffic advisory, traffic advisory, traffic advisory.
Use the Autobahn exit Darmstadt U6 in the direction to Mannheim. Autobahn exit Gernsheim U5 in the direction to Darmstadt. Music off the record for a Tuesday. Glad you joined us. Gary Lewis and all the Playboys here.
Never did too much to make her stay here. I'm sure gonna miss her. Yes, I am.
That's the number 10 best-selling record in the United States these days. Gary Lewis and the Playboys, and I'm sure gonna miss her. Members of the Heidelberg Jazz Workshop will meet at the Worm Service Club this Saturday at 14 hours and at 20 hours. If you're interested in jazz, you're invited to bring your instrument and sit in, or just come and listen. And Brenda Lee is here. Brenda, are you going to sing our flashback tune today?
Uh-huh, honey. My baby whispers in my ear. Sweet nothing.
It's 13, let's make it 14 past the hour, 17th hour to be exact. An invitation to a gunfighter, Yul Brynner, Janice Rule in this movie at the Doughboy Theater in Friedberg, the Gardens Theater at Rhine-Main, you can see that. Partly cloudy with isolated thunder showers this afternoon, becoming mostly cloudy with light rain tonight. Frankfurt 52, Wiesbaden 54, Heidelberg 55. Going up to 60 today. It did go up to 60. It should go down to 37 before the night is completely over. And there you have it. In a word, the forecast is for
Rain, 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 rain. Tears keep coming down. Everybody loves somebody sometime.
Baby, baby, where did all your love go?
In the house of the rising sun. Pretty woman walking down the street. Pretty woman.
5 minutes out here, then we'll be back with portion number 2 of Music Off the Record for this Tuesday. Army Specialist Nolan Kenner saying, join us again in 5 short minutes. We'll be right here. Hope you will, too.
The American Forces Network presents another story from the files of the Provo Marshal Division Headquarters Usurer.
I ain't got nothing but love, babe. 8 days a week.
The Ghost Bomber, story of the Lady Be Good, was written, directed, and produced by Army Specialist Frank Besu, with technical assistance by Army Specialist Ron Mitchell. Heard as Lieutenant Hatton was Army Specialist Tom Gager. Lieutenant Toner was portrayed by Army Specialist Tom Kell. Others in the cast were Army Specialist Jim Davis and Army PFC's Nolan Kenner and Chuck Bain. This is David Minot speaking.
I'm telling you now. Come on, baby, let's play the game of love, love, la 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 la.
Hey, kids! It's time for Thurman and the Captain!
Mrs. Brown, you've got a lovely daughter.
Hey, Thurman, it's the Federal Aviation Agency.
What do you think?
Hey, Thurm.
Yeah?
It's the Federal Aviation Agency, Abadabbas.
Good morning, ladies. This is Lee Geis. What's cooking?
That's the local news roundup. Don Henry reporting.
I'm Henry the Eighth, I am. I got you, babe. Help! I need somebody. You don't believe we're on the eve of destruction.
You are on the sea. Tonight and every night, you'll hear views and interviews on the sea.
Nolan Kenner managed to get his AFN microphone up to Ringo Starr by climbing up the side of the steps, the bottom of which was clogged by the German press. There was only time for a couple of quick questions before the big jet took off again for England.
Ringo, how was the trip?
Oh, a bit of a drag, 30 odd hours we've been sitting on the plane.
How about the reception you had in Australia?
It was very good.
It was? We had some reports of some trouble.
Everybody's had some reports.
Really?
There was about 4 people out of 6,000, so,
They blew the story out of proportion.
They always do.
Thank you very much for talking.
Okay.
When you're not near us, we're home. Oh, Jesus, we love you.
With a love like that, you know you should be glad. Hang on, Sloopy, Sloopy, hang on. Yesterday, love was such an easy game to play.
These are the voices reporting on the world at 1800. A detailed review of today's developments from home and abroad. From the AFN Central News Desk in Frankfurt, here's David Minot.
With South Vietnamese Buddhists.
These days, these boots are gonna walk all over you.
But only 3 when the Green Beret.
Music in the Air is presented by the American Forces Network Monday through Friday at the same time. This program is prepared in our Frankfurt studios by your host, Army Specialist Nolan Kenner. This is the American Forces Network, Europe.
That was the #1 song 6 years ago today, and people are still recording it on albums 6 years later. The Beatles and Yesterday.
The American Forces Network assumes no responsibility for possible damage to your radio as we clog up its innards with what follows.
Stop.
AFN Nuremberg reluctantly presents Mr. Flop, Trent Christman, and his tops and flops, reaching new heights in the musical depths. Now, here's this week.
A couple of weeks ago on Weekend World, our dear bosom buddy, Bill, what's-his-name, interviewed Frank Brzee, the man who probably knows more about the minutiae of early broadcasting than anyone since Marconi. That's Louis Marconi, the unsung genius who composed the immortal radio line, "One Moment, Please," and who later married John's other wife. Mr. Brzee collects old radio shows and presents them as the golden days of radio right here on this here network. He said during the course of the interview that he sometimes records this segment of Weekend World and plays it at his lavish Hollywood parties, which is obviously the only way I'm going to get to a party of his. But one nice gesture certainly deserves another, so we are dedicating today's mess to Mr. Brzee in the hope that it will be helpful to him in clearing the house the next time he wants the lushes to go home from his lavish Hollywood party, to which I'm never invited. This is a Veterans Day song because today is the Veterans Day weekend, and that's the way we radio veterans do things. It's sung in the bellowing baritone of Vaughn Monroe, and it's called Just a Blue Serge Suit. As World War II ran down, there were a few people in the service who wanted to return to whatever it was they were doing before World War II. About 11 million of them, to be exact. According to the lyricist of this 1945 masterpiece, what these guys really wanted to do was put on a blue serge suit and take a walk with their girlfriends. Vaughn Monroe, having spent the war years leading an orchestra, apparently bought this highly debatable premise, and he recorded the thing. Now, speaking as one of the 11 million, I can assure Mr. Monroe that putting on a blue serge suit ranked fairly low on our list of first things to do. But we play it anyway in the hopes that any veterans out there in Radioland will lean back as the song scratches to its interminable conclusion and will dream about the first thing they did when they became a veteran.
Just a blue serge suit and a bright new necktie, a room of his own with a drawer, just a bed with sheets and a home-cooked dinner. That's what he's been fighting for. Don't ask him questions, for he's not talking. All that he wants to do is go out walking in a blue serge suit and a peaceful mind with a girl he left behind.
You think it's going to end here, but it isn't. Don't ask him questions, for he's not talking. All that he wants to do is go out walking in a blue serge suit and a peaceful mind with a girl he left behind. Bill, by the way, studied singing at the Carnegie Institute. A bit of trivia known perhaps to Frank Brzee, but not readily apparent to the listeners of that record. Next week is Halloween, and as with so many of these offerings, we've got a pretty spooky song for you. Until then, there's little else to do but return you to the fantastic shenanigans on this Veterans Day weekend world, which is being flung your way by Bill Swisher, the recently elected third vice president of the future.
France Inter Lorraine, 3 heures.
Step into the yard, the graveyard, that is. Here lies Demon Driver McBlythe, who drove like a fright every night, especially when drinking and totally stinking, but now the grave hides him from sight. Ah, there's McBlythe now, ready for his last beer. Welcome to Tombstone territory. Here lies fast driver McPace, who treated every drive like a race. I should have slowed down, he thought with a frown, as we patted the dirt in his face. Poor McPace, he made a mistake, a grave mistake.
Every job should be handled with precision, and each of us should strive for perfection. That's what zero defects means. In radio, my job requires perfect precision in order that this announcement runs precisely 28 seconds. How about your job? Are you equally precise? Are you striving constantly for zero defects? By constantly striving for zero defects, for perfection, we save money, save time, even save lives. Whatever your job, set your sights on zero defects. Remember what I've been...
Yes, here's an important announcement. In radio, precision is the name of the game. There aren't no room for mistakes of any kind. The same goes for your job. Mistakes cost you hard-earned tax dollars. Mistakes cost you your valuable time. And in the service, like many of us am, mistakes can cost us our very lives. So remember, whatever your job, strive constantly for zero defects.
During the next 28 seconds, we want to tell you about the value of DERO's effects. DERO's effects merely means paying close attention to your job and doing that job precisely, perfectly. DERO's effects in your job means you save tax dollars, save time, and perhaps even save lives. Whether you're a RACIC Bifelman or a rank Repairman, an officer or an unlisted man, get on the DERO's effects bandwagon today. This is AFN Europe, AFN...
Time now to go a-bouncing in Bavaria. From our spacious Studio A in AFN Munich, it's time to go bouncing with the 14 Ramblers as they play our new theme, Bouncing in Bavaria. Yep, we're really going bouncing in Bavaria. Yeah, we're really kicking 'em tonight. This your old chief bouncer right here, riding herd on 14 guys, lined up right in front of the microphones and ready to take off with a bouncy tune entitled Lucky Number. Yep, we're really a-bouncing here in Bavaria tonight. 14 guys that are called the Ramblers. Currently playing at the Haus der Kunst here in Munich. And incidentally, a tip to you guys and gals that are listening to us out there, why don't you drop us a line? The address is Bouncing in Bavaria, AFN Munich, Stuttgart, APO 407-A. Just bounce them on into the old bouncer here, and we'll see if we can't bounce out some tunes for you. Just like we're going to start bouncing right now. It's the final number for today. It's called Park Hotel. because that's the way the Ramblers sign all of their programs off. They call it au revoir. Really, it's trumpet. Oh, whoop. That's the other one. It's called Farewell Blues. We had blues on our mind because, well, we think you'd like to hear our real sign-off. It's trumpet blues. So, fellas, can we have a little bit of trumpet blues? Think we could, Theo? Trumpet blues. Yeah, the Bouncing in Bavaria theme. So, guys and gals, our little bouncing session from Studio A here at AFN Munich has got to come to a close for tonight. Right along about here, we'd like to thank everybody that had their hand in helping us, especially Larry Hilsowitz, our engineer, who came back from the library just to ride gain for us tonight. Last but not least, the 14 guys from Holland known as the Ramblers. Don't forget, you people out there listening in, the address here is Bouncing in Bavaria, AFN Munich, Stuttgart, APO 407-A. Till tomorrow, then, Ev Glenn here saying so long, and don't forget it. This is the American Forces Network.
Another warning about the serious food situation in Bavaria was issued today by Dr. Alois Schlegel, Minister for Food and Agriculture. Dr. Schlegel told reporters that all Bavarian grain mills may shut down within 2 weeks. A cablegram to this effect was forwarded to both the state government here and the Bizonal Food Administration in Frankfurt. Dr. Schlegel, who blames Frankfurt for this situation, was himself a target of criticism when he arrived recently at Nuremberg, where the plight is particularly acute. Angry German housewives milled about the minister, calling him a hunger minister and demanding that they at least receive the food called for by their ration allowance. Here in Munich, police patrols continue to spot-check restaurants, butcher shops, and wholesale markets in search of contraband meat supplies. Most butcher shops in this city are still closed, although black market sources indicate there is more than enough meat for anyone willing to pay the price. But peace reigned in another office of the Bavarian government. Dr. Joseph Mueller, Minister of Justice, and Dr. Philip Auerbach, Commissioner for Racial and Religious Persecutees, settled their differences today. These differences had occupied long newspaper columns of accusations and counter-accusations between the two men, stemming mainly from controversies of the restitution law. Under the agreement today, a statewide office for helping victims of Nazism will be established with Dr. Auerbach as its chief. As soon as the office starts functioning, Auerbach will resign his present position. Bavarian police officials are seeking to extradite a clever swindler who was arrested recently at Hamburg. This bunco merchant, masquerading as a biologist, convinced many farmers here that a vaccine he had invented would triple their grain and potato harvests. He fled when enough victims had purchased his device to make his remaining here a highly dangerous enterprise. Other police blotter news here reports that a bus with a secret compartment built into its body was confiscated recently. In the secret compartment were found 900 cartons of American cigarettes. Incidentally, there is a temporary shortage in the gasoline black market here as a result of the arrest yesterday of 6 men. The 6 are said to have stolen huge quantities of gasoline from Grafenvohr, where the 1st Division conducted several months of military maneuvers, and they peddled this stuff locally at exorbitant prices. DP emigration, meanwhile, continues to move on schedule. More than 800 Jewish DPs will leave for Marseille, France tonight, and then eventually Israel. At least 600 Austrian DPs left yesterday for Salzburg, where they will subsequently resume their places in the Austrian economy. Another 400 DPs of various nationalities embarked from here to Bremen, where ships are waiting to resettle them in Brazil and Canada. Post headquarters today clarify the electricity curtailment. The areas of Allach, Obermenzing, the western part of Nymphenburg, Passing, and Großhastendern will be shut off from 1200 to 1600 hours on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and 0800 to 1200 hours on Thursday and Friday. The north area of Munich will be cut off from 0700 to 1100 hours Monday through Fridays, and the south area of Munich will be cut off from 1300 to 1700 hours Monday through Friday. There is no rationing on either Saturday or Sunday. At Munich Riem Airport, the last special pet plane for the winter took off this morning. The animal cracker transport was a KLM bird, and on board were some 60 dogs of assorted sizes, 4 unhappy cats, and 3 canaries who were not in the mood to sing. One pet parrot had tickets but could not make the plane. United States immigration officials said no. A slight lull was reported from the maternity ward of the 98th General Hospital. Only 1 boy and 1 girl. The new mothers and fathers are First Lieutenant and Mrs. Victor A. Anthony of Munich, a girl, and Sergeant First Class and Mrs. Lonnie G. Kansen of Kaufbeuren, a boy. And finally, here's a note from the Provost Marshal's office. Funeral services for the late Private Ralph Plunita of the 508th MPs will be conducted tomorrow afternoon at 2:30 at St. Ludwig's Church on Ludwigstrasse. The 20-year-old MP was murdered 3 days ago by a German thief. This has been Saul Green with the home edition of the Munich News.
The preceding programs were recorded on October 25, 1948. And now, does anybody remember the AFN Afterthoughts? That was recorded 6 March 1964. Personnel were Rolf Wöhrle, AFN Kaiserslautern Music Librarian on clarinet, Hans Huber, maintenance on bass, Bert Tupi, master control on drums, and the trombone player was Rolf Wöhrle's either cousin or brother, and Carl Baldiff, trumpet, piano, Marianne Baldiff. And then, of course, on 15 May 1964, Trent Christman, in an interview with British bandleader Eric Delaney, got the straight scoop on whether the Beatles would make it or not.
What about, well, we could talk a little about music, I suppose. Whether, do you think the Beatle trend, I mean, that type of music is here to stay? Or
no, I don't think so. No.
Standard music?
I'm sure so, yes. It's.
You think we're going to get back to jazz?
It's been the same all the time. Everything has its little go, doesn't it, you know? Not very long ago, trad music, Dixieland bands, as you call them in England, were all the biggest thing, you know, and now it's all died away. I was speaking to Billy Eckstein just last week, you know, he was over here, and Billy was saying that he thought the big bands and all this, the music that the majority of the people can appreciate and digest.
What kind of music do the people that come in to dance seem to prefer? The wilder stuff or some of the...
Later on in the evening, yes, but in the early part of the evening, no. They want to come in and get acquainted with each other and with us. We like to do likewise, and if we see them getting up to dance to a slow tune, then we will play on that and give them a few more slow tunes.
In other words, they like to hold their girls when they're dancing rather than have them halfway across the dance floor.
Yeah, too true.
Manhattan Spiritual, take 2.
the Small World department, Trent might be interested in the fact that in 1995 I was on a cruise on the Thames, and I heard a band that sounded, I thought, much like the Eric Delaney band, so I walked over and I said that to them and discovered that the drummer had taken lessons from Eric and that one of the sidemen had actually played on the recording that you just heard, Small World, maybe even Weekend World.
Originally to be aired 27 March 64, 21:05 hours. Program starts 5 seconds from Woof. The following program is brought to you live and incompatible in wide stereophonic mouth on AFN.